May God of all hope fill you with joy as you trust in him. Isn't grumbling fun? I'm being completely serious. Now, obviously, whatever experience you went through to cause your grumbling or complaining, that's not fun, but the grumbling part is absolutely satisfying, right? That's why we do it. Something bad has happened in your life to make you feel really uncomfortable, and without even thinking about it, we just do it. Oh, that no good, useless, stubborn, this or that, him or her, what were they thinking? Causing this problem for me. Look at this mess that I have to deal with. Can you believe that all I have to put up with? And immediately, the rage inside of us has been fueled, and you feel completely justified for overreacting, and it makes you feel really good to be able to point the finger at someone else or something else and say, this isn't my fault. And it softens the blow of whatever bad thing you're having to endure. It feels good. But do you think it would feel just as good if we grumble directly against God himself? Now, I have to admit, I have done this, and I'm fairly certain at some point you have too. But almost always we keep God out of our grumbling, right? Because anyone who has ever grumbled directly against God knows exactly how good that feels. It doesn't feel good at all, right? You're at your breaking point. You let it all out straight up to God. You blame him directly. And the second you're done, you're like, oh, that was bad. I should not have done that. Lord, I'm sorry that I said it. I'm sorry that I did this. Please forgive me. You immediately feel guilty, and guilt is not fun at all. And so like the Israelites, we tend to leave God out of the grumbling part. We don't point the finger at God. We want to feel the good kind of grumbling, the grumbling that points the finger at something else or somebody else. In fact, in almost all cases, you probably don't even think to include God. You're not even thinking about God at all at this point because you realize that it's someone else's doing that brought this on for you. Your spouse makes you upset. What do? You don't go directly to God. They did it, so you grumble against them. Our city, state, and national leaders, they create poor living conditions, so what do? Well, we go and grumble against them. Your employer asks you to do something that isn't really in your job description. You don't really want to do it. Your coworker makes your job more difficult. What do? We grumble against them. All of it fueling that good, fun feeling of self-justification. And we never once imagine that all of our grumbling of every kind is really grumbling against God. Why can we say that? That every single complaint, every grumble that we have, no matter who it's directed at, is really ultimately grumbling against God. Why can we say it? Because any complaint, any grumble means that we are dissatisfied with the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and we are failing to trust that God is in charge no matter what, and he knows what is best for us in every situation, even the hard ones. Moses says it twice to the people. He makes certain that they understand what they are doing. Aaron and I, we're nobodies. Who are we? If you're going to complain, God, he is your leader. You want to complain, you want to grumble, that's who you're grumbling against. We're no one. And it may very well be that God doesn't cause what is happening to you. It may very well be someone else's fault to place you in the circumstance that you're in, but even then, God still allowed it to happen. He is still in charge, so if you complain, you're still complaining against him. How much less do you think we would complain if our first thought when something bad happens is, well, God didn't cause this sinful thing to take place that has now put me in a very uncomfortable situation, but he did allow it. And I know that God knows what is best for me. And so somehow, some way, this bad thing will be good for me. What if that was our first thought? We would never complain again over anything, would we? You see what's happening here? You never have the right to complain about anything ever. No matter what it is, no matter whose fault it is, you don't have the right to complain. Complaining is a sin. No matter how justified you think you are in it, complaining is sinful. That's a really hard lump to swallow, isn't it? Especially right now in our day and age where almost all companies that are out there have a complaint department. They literally invite you to complain to them. You know why they do this? They found that on average, only one in every 26 unhappy customers will actually go to the company and say something and complain to them about their situation. While the other 25 unhappy customers, they will just leave and not say anything at all and never return to that business. So in order to keep people's business, keep people coming back, spending more money, they open up this complaint department and try to fix whatever issues people might have, no matter whose fault it is, what fault it is. And so they'll come back and spend money again. Well, look at what that's teaching people. It's okay to complain. We want your money bad enough to where we are willing to listen to you complain. Not that they shouldn't be held accountable and good business practices, all that, but it's teaching us, we should be able to complain. Well, God definitely is listening to our grumbling and our complaining, but it's for an entirely different reason. By the time that the Israelites reached the desert of Sin, it had been about 2 months from their departure with the whole Red Sea. And in that time that they had left Egypt, in that time, within that 2 months, they grumbled against Moses and Aaron at the Red Sea before God opened it up for them to walk through on dry ground. And then again, they grumbled against Moses and Aaron when they couldn't find any water in the desert of Shur. In both of those instances, God didn't test them in any way. He doesn't give a reason or explanation for his help. He just immediately goes into action and solves the problem for them and helps them, parting the Red Sea so that they can cross and turning the bitter waters of Marah into drinking water for the entire encampment. But once they reach the desert of Sin, which is what we just read this morning, and they begin grumbling over having no food, God does something drastically different. He gives them 2 reasons for why he is helping them. First reason is to test them to see if they could follow some simple instructions from him. And the second reason is so that they would know the Lord is really their God. Now, why would God want them to be able to follow some simple instructions? Well, look at what they were having a hard time understanding. God is always in charge. Even though God gave them physical leaders, even though they were hemmed in by the Red Sea, even though it looked like they had no food or no water, God is always in charge, no matter what. So by following some simple instructions that God gave to them, only gather as much food as you need, It was reinforcing the idea that God is their refuge and strength, that no matter what they are going to be facing, he will always be there to take care of them. And the second reason is also simple. Why does God want them to know that he is their God? So that they will know exactly where forgiveness, life, and salvation actually comes from. God was saying to them, I'm listening to your grumbling, you Israelites. I'm listening to your complaining, and I am going to give you what you want so that you can understand the only place where good things come from is me. Now, they should have already realized this, right? He just brought them up out of their slavery in one of the most miraculous ways possible. He just saved them from the Pharaoh's soldiers in, again, a very miraculous way. He provided plenty of water for them to drink in, again, another miraculous way. So they should have gotten it, but by this time, God says, all right, I'm going to step it up a notch. I'm going to test them. They had all of this easy help, didn't test them at all. Now I'm going to test them. Can you begin to see these blessings as my guiding hand and so acknowledge that I am your Lord, leading you to follow me? Or will you just always look at these blessings as getting what's yours and continue to follow yourself? God listened to their complaining, not so that he could get something from them like companies wanting our money. He listened to their complaining so that he could help them even more. Have you ever looked at blessings as a test? Probably not, right? The sufferings that we have to deal with, the hardships that we have, yeah, absolutely, we've seen that. That's a test. I'm being tested, right? But blessings? We all live in a nice house. We all have vehicles to drive. We all have more than enough food to eat. Do you look at those things and think, I have worked really hard for all that I have. I'm going to sit back and enjoy it now? Or do you look at all of those blessings and think, there's no way that I could have any of this stuff? All of this built up stuff, gathered stuff for me and my family without the Lord being with me and giving it to me. Thank you so much, Lord. I want to continue following you. You see, it doesn't matter what is happening in our lives, whether it's suffering or blessing, God wants you looking at him always. If you're suffering, remember, God is always in charge. If you're being blessed, remember, all good things come from his hand. Why would God treat us this way? Whether it's through suffering or blessing, why did God want the Israelites always focused on him? Because he is their leader. And where was he leading them to? The promised land. Stay with me, Israelites. I have this wonderful place for you. Is there suffering along the way? Yes, absolutely there is. But keep looking at me. I promise to lead you in the right direction. Stay with me, Israelites. Is there blessing along the way? Yes, there is. But don't get too attached to it, because what I have waiting for you is so much better. That's why God listens to our complaining, so that he can teach us to remain focused on him. God is your leader. He is with you in that suffering. He's with you in the blessing, and he has promised to lead you into a place so amazing that not even your imagination can capture its beauty. It's why we never have to complain. We talked about earlier how it is a sin if we do complain, but we don't even have to. We never have to, because even when those bad things are happening, God is allowing it to happen so that we never forget where we are being led. Heaven is our home. That's where we are being led. Don't ever forget it. Amen.